Hey, lifers. Dustin here. I believe I am good now. Should be live. Was running a little bit late because of Thanksgiving, but hopefully everything is good now. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully you can see me. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching this. The event has already passed if you're watching the replay. So sorry you missed it. But to everybody watching this, whether you're live or on the replay, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have had a very fun and safe day. And the Egg Bowl is happening right now. I'm not near a television because of the way my shooting setup is. I'm not near a TV, so I can't see what's going on. I saw the Fitzgerald injury, so we could talk a little bit about that. I want to get into rivalry weekend, everything that's going to happen this weekend, playoff implications, and all of that. This is my favorite weekend of the year. This is my holiday. You can take Thanksgiving, you can take Christmas. I will take rivalry weekend. So to everybody in the live stream, hello. I hear people saying sup, Varson188, Space Duck Fondue, Space Doc Fondue. So I think I'm here. I look pale. I am kind of pale, but it's also this light. Let me see if I can dim it a little bit. We'll dim it. We'll see if that does anything. How are you guys doing? You guys have a good Thanksgiving so far? What's the score on the Ole Miss versus Miss State game? I don't know. Last score I saw was 10-6, Ole Miss. Miss State kicked a field goal right before I started to get this ready. So, yeah, the stick pick says 10-6 at halftime. So, what's going on, Michael? Texas Sports Gaming, Gregory Walnut, hello, hello. Jake Stoner, go Cougs. Big game in the Apple Cup this weekend. GoPack says if Lane Kiffin stays at FAU for one more season, FAU could go 11-1 or 12-0. I think, maybe. I don't think he will. I think this was a tryout season, and he will be moving on to a Power 5 team this year. So that's my opinion. 43 people in here. Thank you. Welcome. If you guys haven't seen a live stream yet, I tend to get bogged down in the comments pretty quickly. If you want me to make sure that I see your comment, one of the only few ways I will guarantee that is a super chat, which would be greatly appreciated. It's basically like a tip jar, so I would really appreciate it. I'm here to talk about a lot of the games this weekend, but I kind of let the chat dictate where we go and what we talk about. So that way it's not just me talking at a camera for a really long time. I kind of interact and engage with you guys. So let's see. Grant Ritter 33 says, will the Gamecocks keep it close? I don't know. The talent gap between the two teams is pretty big, but it's at Williams-Brice at night. South Carolina, if they lose the game, in the big scheme of things, who cares as far as the national outlook on it, right? If Clemson loses, it's such a big deal. So all the pressures with Clemson, South Carolina has almost no pressure. So they can take a lot of risks. They can do all kinds of weird things in the game to try to throw Clemson off. And I think the first half is going to be really tough. The second half, Clemson may pull away, but it could also end up being like it was 2 years ago when Clemson was down there and kind of got a little bit of a lead in the second half. And then South Carolina made it a one-score game with, like a second left. But they did get it back to a one-score game. So it may end up being something like that. Who deserves Coach of the Year award says Justin, but there's a 2 in the middle. So I'm just going to call you Justin 2. I don't really know. I'm not going to call you Tustin. That seems kind of weird. Who deserves Coach of the Year award? There's a lot of people that could get that. Obviously, you're going to have the people that are always kind of at the top, like Nick Saban, right? You're going to have Gus Malzahn overcoming early problems to get there. I'm not quite sure a lot of people expected Washington State to do what they did, especially early on. So maybe a Mike Leach. Scott Frost to go undefeated so far at UCF is very impressive. Lane Kiffin at FAU, even though I think he was 1-3 against non-conference teams to go 7-0 in the CUSA is really impressive. Somebody else jump out at me at the top. Yeah, I think those would be the first people that jumped out at me without really like looking at a list of teams and their accomplishments. Who do you guys think should be coach of the year? There'll be a couple. There's a bunch of different organizations and trusts that make those decisions. Florida State's going to destroy Florida. Auburn's going to beat Alabama, and Clemson's going to win a close one. Yeah, I absolutely believe all of those. If I were a betting man, that would be my bet. Destroy Florida. They should beat them handily, but Florida State's not exactly a world beater this year. But I do think Florida State will beat Florida. If I were a betting man, I would say Auburn beats Alabama, especially with Alabama's lack of depth because of injuries on the defense, specifically in the middle, right there at linebacker. And I think Clemson, Carolina is going to be closer than a lot of people think. People who don't know that rivalry are going to think Clemson is going to blow them out the way they did last year, and it probably will not happen. The chat does really weird things. I got to get used to this chat. Maybe it's me. Like, I scroll with my fingers, and sometimes maybe I overcorrect and it scrolls all the way to the bottom. Mark Richt, yeah, at Miami, absolutely. UAB's head coach, yeah, to come back, and they weren't a team last year. And I actually thought they may beat Florida. They really didn't. But I thought they really... I would have bet on UAB beating Florida last week. What school do you think Chip Kelly chooses, UCLA or Florida? Oh, Arrowbound says Kirby Smart. That makes sense. Evan B says UCLA or Florida for Chip Kelly. I think he probably chooses UCLA. I think that's Florida's the better job. You get more money. You're in a more high-profile conference. The East is very winnable right now. UCLA is a more difficult job in a worse market. I mean, it's a great market for recruiting, but you have USC right there. You have pro teams overshadowing you right there. You are in a conference with 3 other teams in your state. Florida, you don't have any of those, but you have more pressure at Florida. You are expected to come into Florida and win immediately. So I think UCLA it's the easier job, not the better job, but it's probably the better job to take for a coach, especially one who didn't coach this past year right now, who coached in the pros the last 4 years and didn't have a lot of success there. To kind of reestablish himself, I would probably tiptoe into UCLA and stay there for a couple of years, and then once I kind of get back into the swing of things, I can go and take over an SEC type job, because Florida, if you're not careful, has the potential to chew you up and spit you back out. And I'm not quite sure that is exactly what, if I were Chip Kelly, that's not what I would want immediately. I would probably rather take the UCLA job, where if you go 6-6, it's fine your first year. If you go 6-6 at Florida, you may not see a second or a third year. So that's my take on it. I don't know. I feel like Florida started going after him first, and then UCLA's made a huge push this past week, and now Florida's trying to like bounce back. I saw where a bunch of regents from Florida took a plane trip from Ocala up to, I think he lives in Nashua, New Hampshire. But Lincoln Riley for Coach of the Year? Nope. I mean, first-year head coach to do what he did with a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, maybe, but I think he was as set up for success for a first-year head coach as you can possibly be. I think that's why Bob Stoops did what he did when he did. But if you want to look at it as first-year head coach, that's interesting. Paul Christ, maybe. The committee doesn't care about Wisconsin. The polls don't really care about Wisconsin. They don't respect Wisconsin or the schedule. So maybe he doesn't get the nod towards that kind of a thing. NC State needs to destroy UNC. They do. If that game is even close, that is an embarrassment for NC State. They have more talent, theoretically more confidence, though the Wake Forest loss probably hurt that a little bit. They probably shouldn't have lost to Wake Forest, who is strangely on a hot streak after the Syracuse and NC State games. But you got to beat what is UNC? They're 2-9, 3-8. NC State needs to beat them, and NC State over the last few years would beat a North Carolina team that NC State was actually the underdog in. So now the roles are reversed. If I was an NC State fan, just because of karma, I would be a little worried. Ohio State and Michigan will be close, but with what happened last week, we will win, says Grant Ritter 33. Ohio State, it's the same thing. Ohio State should win that game. It should not go into overtime. And I assume with what happened last week, they're talking about Michigan's quarterback getting injured. O'Korn is still there. Depends on whether you value that as a really good thing or a really bad thing, but he is still there. But Ohio State just has more talent, especially on offense, with the running backs that they have, with JT Barrett, even though Ohio State fans give him a lot of hell. Actually, fans all over the country give him a lot of hell. Ohio State should beat Michigan. New lighting and mic. No, this is the same mic that I've used for the last few live streams. It's the Blue Yeti, and I got a little pop filter for it. And the lighting is the same lighting I use for my regular videos, which is a ring light. But the camera is back there. It's a Canon, and with the cameras like that, they run for 30 minutes and then they die. They cut off their recording. And for these live streams, I can't do that. There's a way to run DSLRs as a webcam where I can live stream from it. I could figure that out if I wanted to, but everybody tells me that even live streaming, they shut off at 30 minutes. So I would prefer that because that camera looks a lot better than this camera does. But it is what it is. Bobby Petrino for Coach of the Year, #bias. Doomlarius. It's a fun name to say. Doomlarius 2019 says, who will win, Baylor or TCU? TCU's defense is good enough. Baylor's such a weird team. They lost to Liberty, but then they score a lot of points in a lot of the other games in the Big 12 they play. TCU should beat Baylor. That's a really long-running rivalry game. I think they're at 100. I'm going to be wrong if I say a number, but they're over 100 meetings. So things get wacky. The thing about rivalry weekend that I love is that things get really, really wacky. There's no reason. There's that old cliche about throw the history books out the window or whatever. To a certain extent, that's true. 2 years ago, like I said earlier, South Carolina had no right to be within Clemson at all. Clemson should have blown South Carolina out. This was after Spurrier had resigned. Sean Elliott was their interim head coach. Clemson had Deshaun Watson, though he was injured. He's still by far the best player on the field. They had all the talent in the world, and Carolina still made a way to keep it close. In 2009, in the Iron Bowl, and we'll get to the Iron Bowl here in a few minutes, I'm sure. But in 2009, the Iron Bowl, Alabama was so much better than Auburn. So much better than Auburn. And Auburn jumped out to a 14-0 lead. And it was, I can't remember the final score in that game, but they were leading with 2 minutes to go in the game. And Greg McElroy had to do the rollout to Justin Fowler for the touchdown to win and eventually go on to win the national championship. But rivalry games they're so weird. And I love you guys actually talking to each other in the live stream. I think that's pretty neat. One of the reasons why I wanted to start the channel was to build a community, because I didn't really know anywhere to go and talk about football other than the Reddit college football thing. So I like that people talk to each other in live streams. Try to put the @ in front of it. I see a bunch of people doing that, but it helps me because sometimes if you don't do that, I think you're asking me, and then I don't know what you're talking about. Why is a 3-loss Miss State team ahead of undefeated UCF? Asks Will. The committee is very strange. I still don't know what the committee wants. I don't know what they want from teams because UCF is undefeated. Not the hardest schedule in the world, but they beat Maryland. They crushed Memphis, who is the only other team other than USF who they'll play this weekend that has one loss in the conference. They crushed Memphis. I think it was 40-3. But Miss State's losses were to 3 teams in the top 7 of the current poll. Their only losses were to Alabama, close, Georgia, not close, and Auburn. I don't actually remember the score in that game. I want to say it was not close either. But their 3 losses were to those 3 teams. And it's kind of hard sometimes because Clemson was ranked ahead of Miami, right? This is the thing for this week. Clemson was ranked ahead of Miami last week. Even though Clemson lost to a Syracuse team who's not going to go bowling, you can say undefeated or backup head coach. What am I saying? I'm just looking at the camera and rambling. You can say backup quarterback, backup kicker, on the road, short week, all that. And it's all a fair point. But I still think even with Kelly Bryant being hurt, he still played for most of the first half, though he shouldn't have. And Syracuse did, on offense, whatever they wanted to a Clemson defense that at the time I thought was as close to indestructible as we were going to see a defense be this year. And on the opening drive, Syracuse just ran right down the field and scored. So they put Clemson ahead of Miami, even though Miami beat Syracuse. That was at home, whatever. They say Miami's road wins aren't that good. So they put Clemson ahead. Then the committee moves Miami ahead of Clemson because Miami beat Virginia at home when Clemson blew out an FCS team. You want to say it's a conference win over an FCS versus over an FCS team. I get that. But is it really coming back from 14 down to beat Virginia? Is that really that much better than blowing out an FCS team? I don't think it's better enough to jump them. That doesn't make any sense to me. Should Miami be ahead of Alabama? Probably, if you look at statistics. They're both undefeated, but Miami has played Notre Dame. Miami played Virginia Tech. Alabama played LSU, which I would probably put on the same level as Virginia Tech as an equal win. But Alabama, and at the beginning of the year, the Florida State win looked great. Now it doesn't. They played a different team because they played DeAndre Francois, but they don't have anybody to equal Notre Dame yet. If they beat Auburn, no. I would say Alabama deserves number 1. But right now, if you want to put Miami at 1, Alabama 2, I'm fine with that. If you want to put Alabama 1, Oklahoma 2, Wisconsin, what am I saying? If you want to put Miami 1, Oklahoma 2, Alabama 3, I'm fine with that, to be honest with you. People are getting really upset about the top 4 rankings. As long as you're in the top 4, it doesn't matter. Unless you are a team that plays really close to either New Orleans or Los Angeles. If USC if they were undefeated and they were in the top 4, it would matter a whole lot because they need to be the number 1 seed so they can get home field advantage in the Rose Bowl. If LSU is in the mix, they should be really concerned. Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, Miami, none of these teams are really close to either of these 2 playoff bowl games, so it doesn't really matter. Who wins, Notre Dame or Stanford? Irish 42, I think that depends on which of each of those teams show up. It depends on how effective Josh Adams is at running the ball, how effective Brandon Wimbush is at distributing the ball around the field and making some plays. It depends on if Bryce Love is totally good to go, and he looked fine last week. 2 years ago, I thought Notre Dame would beat Stanford, and they lost to Stanford in Stanford Stadium, and it cost them a playoff berth. So that's one of the really, really interesting games of the weekend, because there's a chance that a Notre Dame team shows up that just blows Stanford out, that shuts down Bryce Love, makes him throw the football, wears down the defense, and wins the game. There's also a chance Bryce Love runs for 250 yards and seals his ticket to New York for the Heisman Trophy. Plus, Stanford still has to probably maybe play in the Pac-12 championship game against USC. So there's some motivation for them there. Notre Dame, this is it until the bowl games. I don't know if that matters. It probably doesn't matter. But it depends. Right now, I would pick Notre Dame. But if Stanford ends up winning that game, it would not surprise me at all. Rooting for Miss State to make Alabama look better, I guess. What's really interesting about the playoffs, and let me know what you guys think about this. The really interesting thing is if Auburn beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl. If Auburn beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl, Auburn's a lock. Obviously, we just watched Auburn destroy Georgia. I can't imagine they would lose to Georgia in the SEC championship. So Auburn's in the playoff. The winner of the ACC championship, we'll say for giggles, it's Miami. I can't imagine Oklahoma losing to a West Virginia team with a backup quarterback, or probably a TCU team they've already beaten. So you have Auburn, Miami, Oklahoma. Who's number 4? Is it a one-loss Alabama team that was number 1 in the AP poll all year until they lost to a team that's also in the top 3 in the country? Is it a Clemson team who has 2 losses, one of them a loss that the committee seems to be very forgiving of, and they beat Auburn? Is it a Notre Dame team that beat Stanford and is sitting there with 2 losses? Is it an Ohio? I guess the winner of the Big Ten championship will say Ohio State beats Wisconsin. That's something I forgot. Is it Ohio State who lost to Oklahoma? If you're trying to say Clemson beat Auburn, Ohio State lost to Oklahoma, you'd have to put Clemson in over them in like a pecking order, right? I don't know. That would be interesting. Do I say Notre Dame joins the Big Ten? Yeah, join the Big Ten. Kick Rutgers out and just join the Big Ten. They're not going to do that. Notre Dame doesn't want to join a conference, and the Big Ten's not going to kick out a team that they think for some reason gives them access to a New York market. Where Clemson and Miami are ranked right now is irrelevant since they play each other in the ACC championship. Yes and no. So now that Clemson's 3, if they lose to a number 2 team, it doesn't make any sense. But it'll be easier for the committee to put them at 5. If they were number 2 and lost to the number 3 team, I feel like in the committee's head they would have a better chance of being that 4th team if Wisconsin loses. Because this is not the same committee. That's wrong to say because there's different people on it now. But this is the same body. This is the same idea that had at the last week of the season in 2014 TCU 4, Baylor 5, and Ohio State 6. And then TCU destroyed their opponent. I think it was Iowa State. Baylor played somebody, I honestly don't remember, but they won. And then Ohio State beat Michigan, went on to beat the brains out of Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship with Cardell Jones. And then they jumped Ohio State ahead of TCU. It's like, well, you had TCU at 4. They played the same weekend, the same day, because the Big 12 didn't have a championship game. So they played on December 2nd or whatever. TCU was 4. They said TCU is ahead of ahead of Ohio State. And then TCU won big, and then they dropped to not only 5th, they got put behind Baylor. So this is a committee that I don't believe their rankings during the year anyway. I kind of think that their rankings don't mean anything. They're meaningless. Both literally, because they don't matter until the end, and they can literally just change their mind. If they wanted to, they're never going to. But if they wanted to, they could just be like, all right, Duke, you're number one in football. And there's nothing we could say about it. Duke would just be in the playoff. So they can do whatever they want. If Oklahoma loses, do they miss the playoffs because they won't have Mayfield? They won't have Mayfield. Lucas, that may be in the idea that he's not playing against West Virginia. He is. I'm not sure what you mean because they won't have Mayfield. But if Oklahoma loses, do they miss the playoffs? Yes. I think if they lose to either West Virginia or TCU/Iowa State, they're out. Because TCU, Iowa State are the only two teams that can get into the Big 12 championship to play the Sooners. Dustin, does Les Miles get a new coaching job? And just be careful, all of those emojis put it into it held it for review because it viewed it as spam. Yeah, I think he gets a head coach. I can't imagine Les Miles not coaching in 2018. Can you? It seems almost unfathomable that he would not coach next year. He's such a good coach. He's won. He's still young for a coach. Yeah. Aiden Highlight says, I can't play NCAA 14 anymore because my 360 just died. That is a shame, my friend. As someone who did not play NCAA 14 for 2 straight years, and now I'm playing it again, that sucks. If Bama loses to Auburn, which they won't, good way to start, what does the committee do with an 11-1 Bama? Yeah, that's the question. I don't know. It depends on what happens in the Big Ten championship game. It depends on what happens in the ACC championship game. Because if Clemson beats Miami, Miami would go into that game 11-0 because of the Hurricane game that they missed. They'll go in 11-0. They'll come out 11-1. Having only lost to the number 3 team in the country. Though I think Clemson will jump back ahead of Miami after this week. If they beat South Carolina, because now South Carolina's a ranked team for some reason. So if they beat number 24 and Miami beats Pitt, I think Clemson will re-jump Miami. I don't know what, and if they don't, I don't understand what the committee's doing at all. So if they beat South Carolina and then Clemson beats Miami, Miami's in almost the exact same boat as Alabama if Alabama were to lose. But Alabama doesn't have the Notre Dame win, doesn't have the Virginia Tech win that Miami does. So I would think Miami would still be ranked ahead of Alabama. So it kind of depends on what happens in some of the other games. Tuna Duck. I only laugh because it's Thanksgiving. Tuna Duck says, Arkansas to the Big 12. Yeah, they have more in common with them than the SEC, in my opinion. LSU is ranked in the top 20. Remember when they lost to Troy? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And Boise State beat Troy. Thoughts on Wisconsin getting disrespected by the media, Dustin? So, I don't think they're being disrespected by their ranking right now, just because of their opponents. Though the Iowa win is really good. The Northwestern win looks good now. And if they can beat Ohio State, that will also look really good. The ranking, I don't think is disrespect. What I found extraordinarily disrespectful, if that's the... I would rather use the term crazy, but if I was a Wisconsin fan, I would say disrespectful, is when I think it was the first or second playoff poll was announced. Kirk Herbstreit and some of the guys on ESPN saying things like, there's a chance an undefeated Wisconsin who wins their conference championship doesn't make it into the playoff. What? What are you talking about? Of course they would. The only other team that could possibly do that's Alabama. If you are an undefeated Power 5 team that wins your conference championship and I mean, if 5 teams do that, I get it. Somebody has to be left out. But if only one other team does it, even if you're number 4, why in the world would you not be in the top 4? That doesn't make any sense at all. That was the one thing that I was like, you're dumb. That doesn't make any sense. And if they left out an undefeated Power 5 team, what looks like right now could be the only undefeated Power 5 team, assuming they get past Ohio State, and again, Auburn wins the Iron Bowl, then why even have the playoff? What's the point? Why even have the countdown like the polls every Tuesday? Just let these dudes just pick people at the end of the year. What's the point of even doing all of this? Ohio State is not making the playoffs this year. Just give up already. I don't think they are. I think even if they beat Wisconsin, I think there's like 1 or 2 too many hurdles. You have to go a little too far from where they are right now. If they were ranked like 7th right now, ahead of like Notre Dame, then I think they would have a better shot. But they're just a little too far. It's like USC. Just at 11, they're just too far back. They can't do it. And there's nobody left. At least Ohio State is Wisconsin. I've heard people be like, yeah, USC can still make it. Nope. Not in my opinion. What happens if Alabama, Miami, Clemson, and Oklahoma loses? Man, I don't know. That would be nuts. If Auburn beats Alabama, if Miami beats, or South Carolina beats Clemson, and then Clemson beats Miami, and then Oklahoma loses TCU, I have no idea. If Alabama loses, where do you think the committee put Alabama in or not? I don't know. Tigers fan 77. That's the question. To me, that's the real question of all of this. If Alabama beats Auburn, I think it solves a lot of problems for the committee because they can just say, all right, SEC winner, ACC winner, Oklahoma and Wisconsin, you're in. If Wisconsin loses to Ohio State, you can just put the ACC loser in and kind of call it a day and say, well, we think these are the 4 best teams, and everybody's happy. If Alabama loses, I think it screws a lot of things up, especially if Alabama and Wisconsin lose, and you have no undefeated teams. That'll be the doomsday scenario for this committee. I think it'll be the one scenario where the committee just sits in a room and looks at each other for an hour before anybody speaks. That kind of a thing. Will Barrett be drafted? I think so. I don't think he'll be a first-round draft pick, Lucas. I'm not like a talent evaluator for the NFL, and it kind of depends on need. But I think he's a proven leader. I think he has some intangibles that a lot of teams would like. And he has a lot of experience now against really good teams, but probably 3rd to 4th round, I would think. The 3rd seed in the playoff is bad luck. Yeah. Actually, so was the 1st seed. I don't think a team... I think Ohio State was 4 in 2014. And then Alabama and Clemson reached 2 the last 2 years. So technically the 1st seed is bad luck too, I think. Ohio State is in if Alabama wins out. Miami does, and Oklahoma as long as Ohio State wins out too. Maybe. I think based on resume, they still may put Clemson in over Ohio State. But the one thing I think I really differ on than a lot of the people on TV is I feel like they don't say this thing that I think is the truth. And that is, I don't actually think the committee cares about getting the 4 best teams in. I don't really think they care. I think they are there. They are put there by the NCAA or whoever, the TV people. I can't remember if they report to the NCAA or not. But they are put in place to create money, to create viewers, to build interest and intrigue in the playoff. If that happens to be the 4 best teams, That's awesome. If it happens to be that Ohio State has more cachet than TCU, sorry, TCU, we're going to use Ohio State was a conference champion. And TCU technically split it, and we don't really think that matters. We want to reward conference championships. And then 2 years later, Penn State beats Ohio State. Penn State wins the conference championship, and Ohio State gets in. And the committee goes, Ohio State just passes the eye test. It's not because Ohio State's brand is better than Penn State's brand, especially over the last 5 years or so, everything that happened in Penn State. No. Ohio State's the better team. We see that they're the better team. And then they lose 31-0 to Clemson. And you're like, oh, well, Penn State would have at least given us a game, if not won the game itself. So I think like Ohio State over Clemson, it depends on where they want, who's number one. I think they want, I was telling my brother this the other day that I think the best four for entertainment value, the best four teams that really hate each other would be Oklahoma, Alabama, Auburn, and Clemson. All four teams don't like each other. All four teams have history over the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously, you have the Iron Bowl. Auburn and Oklahoma, maybe this isn't true. I feel that they just hate the SEC, but I think that was really just Bob Stoops. But they played in the Sugar Bowl last year. It was not. It was a pretty chippy game with the whole Joe Mixon thing going on. Alabama Clemson 3. A lot of people would tune in to see that. Alabama Auburn is old rivals. They've played, I think, almost 60 times. They played earlier this year, but they played 5 times in the last 8 years or something. So those four teams really hate each other. Go Pack asks, anyone know why Ole Miss is ineligible for the postseason? Yes, they did a self-reported bowl ban, or self-instituted bowl ban. Excuse me. Because of the investigation into Hugh Freeze. And that was announced before anything to do with an escort service in Tampa. That was because of a recruiting investigation by the NCAA. So they're ineligible no matter what. So which stinks because does anybody have the update on the Egg Bowl? What the score is right now? Last I saw, they were leading 10-7, and a win would get them bowl eligible. But Bob Stoops is my uncle. I think you meant to say and my uncle, both from Youngstown. Youngstown is Ohio in general, and Youngstown specifically has produced a lot of coaches and head coaches. It's really weird. It's like I think 70% of all of the astronauts in the U.S. space program and NASA are all from Ohio. Doesn't make sense. Will asks, why is 91 USF not ranked? I don't have them ranked. I never really believed in USF, so maybe it's my own personal bias. And then they lost. I think they lost to Houston. But they lost, and I was like, yep, well, there you go. They just, I don't know. There was something about them that I just never jived with. And I feel like the committee looks at that too. And unfortunately, a lot of teams in the American, especially in the East, it's just USF and UCF. So the strength of schedule isn't there either. Because UCF played Navy and Memphis. I'm not sure USF played. I know they didn't play Navy. I'm not sure if they played either. Frank Schaefer asks, your dream non-conference out-of-state rivalry that has never happened. I always thought South Carolina and North Carolina should be a bigger rival. I think that's fun. I like that LSU and Texas A&M are becoming rivals. I think that's a good one. There's a chance 10 years from now that'll be the best, most entertaining rivalry of the year. You had Kansas, Missouri. Non-conference out of state. Florida, Georgia's rivals. Georgia, Tennessee's rivals. South Carolina's rivals with all of them. Texas and Oklahoma are rivals. Oregon, Washington are rivals. Yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot. A lot of people conferences used to be based on this thing called geography instead of putting West Virginia in the Big 12 and Louisville in the ACC. It used to be based on a thing called geography. And so a lot of these teams are kind of rivals. Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Virginia, Michigan, Ohio State. I'm sure there's somebody that's really angry I didn't mention that first. I'm just kind of working my way around the country. So yeah, I'm not really sure there is one. Boiler Squad 24 says he loves my channel. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. What teams in the FBS should move to the FCS like Idaho, says Rascal 2019 Gaming. A lot of S's. New Mexico State's the first one jumps out at me. They're about to be without a conference. I don't think they're the type of team that can survive in the independents. Speaking of which, I think UMass should probably jump back down. They have not panned out moving up. I think the teams in the Sun Belt are, other than the two that are getting kicked out in Idaho and New Mexico State, are good. I think give Coastal some time, and their head coach, who did not coach this year because of allergy issue or something weird. I reported on it in a video for College Football News right before the season started. But Coastal will come along. Georgia Southern was really good out of the gate. They couldn't get a Sun Belt title in their first year, which is ridiculous, and they should have. I think they went 8-0 in the conference. They should have won the Sun Belt that year. Trying to think of teams that have jumped out. Yeah, I'm fine with who's there. I wonder about Liberty. I wonder how they're going to be, because it kind of looks like they're planning out a 1A independent path, and I think Jerry Falwell has it in his head that they're going to be the BYU for evangelicals. And I think years from now, maybe. Right now, probably not. But Liberty is really... I want to do a video. I need to do some research on it. But I want to do a video in the offseason about Liberty football, because they're expanding their online presence. A friend of mine in Georgia got a graduate degree from them online. The first time she ever stepped foot at the campus of Liberty in Lynchburg was when Trump gave that speech. He gave the... the big speech at the end. That was the first time she'd ever been there. So if Liberty does stuff like that, their fan base is going to get bigger all over the country, which I think is smart, but that'll be kind of interesting. What's the update on Nick Fitzgerald's leg? Please tell me, at me. I'll go ahead and spoil it for you, even though I'm not watching the game. Terrible. If you didn't see the injury, I was getting ready for this and doing stuff around the house, and I had the score update on my computer that I was clicking on, but I wasn't really watching a lot of the game. And my mom texted me, was like, "Did you see what just happened to that boy's leg?" And I was like, no. And so I went on Twitter, and people uploaded videos that they took of their screens of their TV, and his ankle is like, his foot is dangling off his leg. So he is done for the year. Whatever it is, he's done for the year. Because, that was not good. What scenario would allow Notre Dame to make the playoff? I don't know. The loss to Georgia and the loss to Miami seems to me that would be the barrier, like the barrier from entry into the playoff, because you have, especially if those two teams lose their conference championship games, then Miami is like 2 or 3 steps away from the playoff, in my eyes. The playoff would kill you in order to get Notre Dame in the playoff. That's how much I think they want the Irish in there, but it's just too much to jump over to get them in. So I'm not sure Notre Dame can get in. Ole Miss leads 23-6. Dang, that's going to lead to a salty year in the Magnolia State, because I cannot imagine Miss State fans are not going to think that was on purpose. Elliot Mullins asks, is there any chance Kerryon even gets invited to New York? Probably not. I think committees like the Heisman Trust make their mind up in mid-October. Unless something spectacular happens. They pretty much make their mind up of who they're inviting earlier than they should. I think that the Heisman should be given out at the end of the year after the national championship and the bowl games and all of that. Because, like, if Kerryon got into the playoff with Auburn, he would have potentially, I mean, if he was in the playoff, he'd have to have beaten Alabama. So you have the Iron Bowl, the SEC championship, and then 2 playoff games to make a case. And he could leapfrog everybody and jump to the front. But because that's not the way they do the Heisman Trophy, they're probably only going to invite 3 people. They should invite 5. Because the way I do the Heisman Watch videos, if you guys have been watching that, is what I would do. That would be my ballot. But the way they view it is different. So they're gonna invite Baker. They're gonna invite Saquon. They're gonna invite Bryce Love. I think that'll probably be the only 3 they invite. I like it when they invite 5. And if they invite 5, it'll probably be Josh Adams. I almost want to say Khalil Tate, even though his statistics, that's a hard word to say, doesn't bear it out. Every Heisman Watch, basically, for ESPN that I see has him in the top 5, which is interesting. Dalton Smith says, just saw Nick Fitzgerald's injury. It was gruesome. Yeah. It was not good. Can Tennessee rebuild? Wow, I said that really Southern. Can Tennessee rebuild? Who should we get? Go Vols. Yeah, of course Tennessee can rebuild. They're going to throw money. Whoever they get next, they are going to throw a ton of money out. It's not going to be John Gruden. I don't know why people keep thinking that. It's not going to be John Gruden. But whoever they get next, they are going to throw a lot of money at. They are going to give them all the resources they need because Tennessee is sick to death of losing. They are in a borderline, sometimes pitiful SEC East. If they don't beat Vandy, they're going to go 0-8 in the conference. And they've never even had 8 losses in a season, let alone 8 SEC losses. So watching Alabama do what Alabama has done, Tennessee fans think that should be us. We can do that. And under the right circumstances, they're absolutely right. So yeah, of course Tennessee can rebuild. Who should we get? That I don't know. Because I don't know what direction Tennessee wants to go in now. Because when Butch Jones was hired, it was like a slam dunk hire. Everybody, I saw a tweet the other day that somebody retweeted of Reese Davis being like, he's going to dominate. Tennessee's going to kill it. Nope, didn't happen. So who should they get? I mean, I would give all the people you've been hearing about a phone call. I'd give Scott Frost a call. Chip Kelly doesn't seem interested in that anymore. If you really wanted to be a troll, you should get McElwain. That'd be fun. Hot Cosby, who I see all the times in the comments, so I appreciate you. What is your favorite team to watch besides Bama and Clemson? I don't really have another one. Like, for me, college football is so great. I love college football. I thought my screen froze. I love college football. And so for me, then it turns into games or players or scenarios. So for instance, I can't remember what the other game was, but once it started snowing in the Wyoming-Colorado State game, that was it. I was watching that game. It was already a rivalry game. I like both teams irrationally. If you remember my video from about a month ago, I irrationally like both teams. And it was snowing. Yeah, I was watching that. So I watched that game. But there's no other team that I must see other than Alabama or Clemson. If Alabama or Clemson on, I kind of, because I have UVerse, and I just flip around to all the different games. So primarily I'll settle on that game unless it's not a competitive game. My brother will sometimes come over and watch football, and he gets really mad because he's a diehard Clemson fan, and Clemson will be playing the Citadel. And I'll flip it from there and watch another game, and he's like, man, turn it back to the Clemson game. I'm like, dude, I don't care about that game. It doesn't matter. Clemson's up 35 to nothing. I don't care. So the more college football you watch, I've noticed, the more you talk about college football, the less you become a homer to a certain degree, which is interesting. There's 96 people in here right now. Yeah, that's really cool. Again, guys, I get lost in the chat. So if you really want me to see your comment or ask a question, and it's Thanksgiving, I'm not trying to guilt you, but there is that little super chat icon right underneath the chat. If you want to throw me $1 or $2, I would appreciate it. If not, that's cool. I just can't guarantee I'll get to your question. And I'm not ignoring anybody. There's a lot. And sometimes I'll get bogged down with like 3 questions in a row, and then I'll kind of scroll down a little bit. Lil JJ asked, do you hate Georgia? I do not hate Georgia. Georgia actually is one of my favorite campuses I've ever been on. And I've been on campuses that I don't particularly care for, and it does strangely impact the way I view the team. So I like Georgia. I want Kirby Smart to do well. I love Athens. I love Georgia's campus. I've never walked under the arch, for the record. No, I don't hate Georgia. Larry Fedora should not be fired because North Carolina had 25 players out for the season and 15 after like 4 games. I don't believe, and this is an old school approach. I know that was towards Aiden, but this is an old school approach. I don't think one season should damn you anyway. Yeah, North Carolina sucks this year, but give them a second chance. Let's see if they suck next. If they struggle again next year, you got to let them go. But just 1 year of a really bad team, I don't believe in firing. A lot of athletic directors are way too quick to the trigger, in my opinion. Could Wisconsin's defense handle or contain any of the top 4 teams? Bama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Miami. People have said I'm delusional for even thinking they could, but I do. Yes, some of those matchups favor Wisconsin more. Miami is such an interesting team to me right now because I don't think they're the most talented team in the world. I think that Mark Richt has done a really, really good job with this Hurricanes team. I think that stupid turnover chain, it is absolutely amazing to me. And one of the reasons why I think college football is the greatest sport in the world, that something like a turnover chain, all it is a gold chain with your school's emblem on it. If you've watched any Miami games, watch the Virginia game, watch the Notre Dame game, it legitimately fires these kids up. They genuinely love it, and it is a momentum changer and changes the complexion of the entire game. It has changed the entire season for Miami. It won't do it next year, so Hurricane fans, please enjoy it while you can. Because other schools, you saw Oregon's terrible knockoff. People are going to start doing it too. It's just not going to mean as much yet. It does right now, so seize it while you can. But, for instance, I think Wisconsin is a better matchup for Miami than they are against Baker Mayfield or a Clemson or Bama offense when they're clicking. They both have been bogged down at different times of the year for different reasons. But I think against Miami, for instance, Wisconsin, I think it would be a tougher out for Miami, especially Wisconsin's defense against Miami's offense. I think that would be a lower scoring game than some of the other teams. But if the way I look at it, because Clemson plays Miami next week, and I've been talking to my dad about this, who's a Clemson season ticket holder, and he's like, we're going to beat Miami. I think it'll be close, but I think we're going to win. And my response is, as long as Clemson doesn't have a turnover, I think Clemson wins. But if Miami gets a turnover and gets that stupid turnover chain, I keep saying stupid. I love it. But I say stupid in the fact that it shouldn't work. It's what Tennessee tried to do with that dumb trash can at the beginning of the year. It should not work. But if Clemson turns the ball over, if Wisconsin turns the ball over, that might be a wrap. As weird as that is to say. Do I think Georgia will get into the college football playoff? Also, go Dogs. Let's hope, because we've been through a lot. I want Rick to Miami to get in because I liked him a lot at UGA. Yeah, so I'm wondering if Mark Rick wants... I keep feeling like I'm saying his name. I keep feeling like I'm putting like an extra H somewhere. Mark Richt. I wonder if he wants that. Because there's a part of him that probably wants to get revenge, beat Georgia, prove to the Georgia fan base, see, I'm a winner. I can win. You fired me because I was only giving you 9 or 10 win seasons every year. Then you fire me? All right, I'll prove to you. But there's also got to be part of him that, like, he was at Athens for like 13 years. So I'm assuming he still loves the University of Georgia. He still wants them to do really well. So that would be interesting. Does Hugh Freeze get another head coaching job? Not next year. He's got to work his way back. I think whenever there's like a media scandal and official, like, urgent responder PR people come in, what they always tell celebrities is, shut up, go away, and in a year or two nobody will remember this and we could do like a makeover. And I think that's what Hugh Freeze is going to have to do. But especially, it depends on what the NCAA finds about him. If he was really as dirty as I'm pretty sure he is, as far as recruiting, not anything to do with like escorts or anything, just as far as recruiting, then he shouldn't get another job. Michael Allen asks a really interesting question. Angriest you've ever been after a college football game? So, any Clemson or Georgia Tech fans in here will remember the game I'm talking about. 2004, I was sitting in the student section of Clemson. We had somehow traded our IPTAY tickets to sit in the student section. And I was in the... If you've ever been to Clemson, you know the student section is on one side of the hill is the band, and on the other side of the hill is the student section, and that's kind of all the student section, including the hill. And Clemson was up on Georgia Tech. Was it by 8? I think it was by 8. With like a minute to go in the game. And we had to punt to Georgia Tech. They had to score twice. The ball goes over the punter's head. No, we were up by 4. Ball goes over the punter's head. He falls on it. Georgia Tech, very next play, Reggie Ball just throws it right up to Calvin Johnson in the back corner of the end zone, over Justin Miller, right in front of us. And Georgia Tech wins the game. That was Calvin Johnson's coming out party. And I was 15. My cousin was 14. My brother was 9, maybe 10. We all 4 of us walked back to my dad's car just cussing, just yelling and cussing. And I decided, my head hurt, like my whole body hurt, my throat hurt, my head hurt. And I decided after that game I was never going to get that angry again. Never. And so I've never gotten that angry again over a football game. I've felt like heartbroken, like the kick 6. I felt my entire like being leave my body for a couple hours. I've never seen the kick 6, by the way. I was at work when that happened, and I've never watched it, believe it or not. But I was keeping up with it on the ESPN app, and I saw the score change. Ole Miss leads 24-6 entering the fourth quarter. Yeah. Was this Calvin Johnson days? Yep. Calvin Johnson. What do you think of Georgia Tech head coach Paul Johnson, especially his offense, just like Pee Wee? And then 2 questions later, Aiden asked, do you think Georgia Tech should fire Paul Johnson? He says because the triple option doesn't work and it won't ever win a championship. It did win a championship, 2009 ACC title, but they got taken away because of an ineligible player, I believe. So technically it didn't, but it did. I think once you get to a certain point, you can only take a program so far. You can only do so much. And I think Paul Johnson is about there with Georgia Tech. I think it was the same way with Rick Georgia and with Bo Pelini in Nebraska. You just get to a point where you're like, well, this is who we are. And it kind of fluctuates within a win or two each year. But Georgia Tech with Paul Johnson is a 7-5, 8-4 team. Occasionally, they'll have an Orange Bowl year. Occasionally, they'll have a 6-6 year. Occasionally, they will have like a 3-9 year. So that's who they are. I feel like it hurts them in recruiting because I wouldn't want to go to Georgia Tech to play offense unless I was running back. They strangely keep getting really good wide receivers, which I don't get, but it's probably time. It's 10 years. It's been a while. All right. 97 people watching. Neat. Thoughts on Louisville versus Kentucky? I think it's a lot like last year. Louisville, obviously, I think was the better team last year. Going into the game, I mean. Everybody thought Louisville was much better than Kentucky. Kentucky is a scrappy team at times. Louisville is Lamar Jackson and 21 other people. And last year, Kentucky did a good job of forcing Lamar into some situations he didn't like. He had a lot of turnovers in that game, including, I believe, the fumble that set up Kentucky's game-winning field goal, if I'm not mistaken. It's in Kentucky, so if Kentucky did the upset in Louisville, and I think overall Kentucky's probably a better team this year than they were last year, and I think Louisville's a worse team than they were last year, and Kentucky still won. I don't know the spread. I think Louisville's probably favored, but I don't know. I think the ACC, SEC games, the ACC should win every single one of them except Georgia, Georgia Tech. But I think Kentucky may be the SEC team to pull the upset, and I think Georgia Tech may be the ACC team to pull the upset. So even though I think Louisville is probably going to be favored going into that game, if Kentucky beats Louisville, that would not shock me or surprise me the way it did last year, for instance. If Georgia Tech beat Georgia, that would not shock or surprise me. Georgia Tech has a knack for beating Georgia in years they have no business beating them in. And I think Georgia, the game's in Atlanta, and for some reason I want to say that Georgia hasn't beaten Georgia Tech in Atlanta in 4 trips or something. I may be wrong about that. Sharkman, people are trying to figure out if you're the left shark or the right shark, my friend. Let the people know. People have questions. Let them know. The maddest I've ever been in my short life as a Georgia fan is in 2015. Tennessee, it was bad. We blew a 24-3 lead and Nick Chubb had a gross injury, but most of the losses are heartbreaking. Yeah, I remember that game. That game going to overtime? I remember Nick Chubb got hurt like in the first quarter, like really, really early on. Who do I have in the Apple Cup? So, the Apple Cup is going to be a lot of fun to watch. It always is. It's one of those Pac-12 rivalries that I feel like every single Pac-12 rivalry, the Territory Cup or Territorial Cup? Arizona State's under the radar. USC, UCLA is under the radar. Civil War is under the radar. Apple Cup is under the radar. I think Washington's been the most consistent team all year. They've proven that they can win with Jake Browning throwing it for 300-plus yards. They can win it with Myles Gaskin running for 200-plus yards. And Luke Falk, him and Mike Leach seem like they're in like an on-again, off-again relationship because he'll have a game where he throws 5 interceptions, and then he'll have a game where he throws 5 touchdowns. And it kind of depends on the week. The game is in Seattle, so I would probably guess Washington wins the game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like last year's game ended up being. I do think it'll be closer, but I think Washington wins it, which means Stanford wins the North. Territorial Cup. Thank you. I couldn't remember. I was like, Territory Cup doesn't sound right. Oh, did I get a donation? Where can I see that at? Sorry, I'm in my... There's a way to see donations. Oh, no. I hope I didn't mess this up. I just went back. Hopefully I didn't mess it up. Did I get a donation from Sharkman? He did. Yeah, he says I donated. Dang it. Where'd it go? Oh. There it is. $2. I'm so sorry. I thought it would pop up and show me where the donations... There's a tab. I've seen other streamers do this. There's a tab where it shows everybody that donated to your live stream. While I am looking for that, I will answer your question. How would you reorganize the Big Ten divisions? So, I'm a big fan of geography. I like when teams split it up by geography. I think it helps create a better sense of rivalry. I think it's easier to remember who teams are. I don't really like the way the ACC has it set up, because there's enough tradition between all the teams where it makes sense. But how would I change the Big Ten? I actually like it the way it is. I know there's too much on the East. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, versus the West, where most years it's probably just going to be Wisconsin until teams like Nebraska or maybe a Minnesota or Northwestern kind of step up. After all of that, because I kept seeing people shout you out. I didn't know it was for a donation. I apologize. It took me that long. Finally, thanks, everybody. I'm sorry, man. I really didn't see it. So that one went away really quick when I was in the middle of a diatribe, I guess. I have the page up now. But it took a long time for me to answer that question, to see the question, and I apologize. My real answer is I'm not actually sure I would change it, because I know from my experience that in the SEC growing up, the East was the powerful division, and now it's the West. And I have a belief that it eventually kind of balances each other out. You could argue the ACC's never really been that way. When Virginia Tech was really hot in the mid-2000s with Matt Ryan, did I say? Like, you had Virginia Tech and Boston College. Virginia Tech kept getting the better of Boston College and won the first ACC championship game. But it's really been the Atlantic ever since. So I think the Atlantic has won the last 6 ACC championship games, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't actually balance out. I feel like it does. Ethan asks, can I do predictions on the conference championship games? Yes. I'm going to... My plan, anyway, is to do... preview individual videos. I did that last year, if any of you were around a year ago, for the Power 5 games. ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC. I did those individual games. I'm going to try to do it for all 9 conference championship games. I don't know how I missed that donation. I'm sorry, Sharkman. All right, some of those zip by. Yeah, Matt Ryan was with Boston College. Yeah, I got ahead of myself. Whenever I think of Virginia Tech in like 05, 06, 07, I think of the Virginia Tech Boston College games, because they met in 2 straight seasons and then 2 straight ACC champions. I just did not communicate that well. How to solve the recruitment issue of Georgia Tech. Our courses are tough. No A+ or A-, just A/B. Oh, really? Why? Seems like for GPA you would need the plus and the minus, no? The recruitment issue of Georgia Tech, you're going to have to get a higher football profile. And the academics of Georgia Tech obviously are really good. especially if you're a hell of an engineer or you're planning to be one. But yeah, you just have to build up the football program, and I'm not sure that Paul Johnson is that guy. See, I see that super chat. See if it pops up and works now. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, Tamra Henson. I hope I said that right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Luke Fickle donated. For real, for real? Logan Dameron says, do you think Luke Fickle can bring Cincinnati back? Yeah. Well, I don't know. He doesn't have a long history of head coaching, just this year, and this year hasn't gone very well for Cincy. But he knows the area, being at Ohio State for all those years. He's learned under some very good head coaches, and I think he just needs some time and place to kind of build up his team, his infrastructure. It's only 1 year. He hasn't even had an entire recruiting cycle yet. So can he? Maybe. I would bet more yes than no, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time to see that kind of pan out. Do you think the Group of 5 championship games will be better matchups than the Power 5 games? When you say better, I feel like you mean more interesting. Yes. I think overall they probably will. I think, well, the ACC is going to be interesting with Miami and Clemson. Ohio State, Wisconsin is going to be fun. I think the SEC championship is going to be, whoever wins the Iron Bowl is going to beat Georgia. I don't want to say fairly handily, but Auburn, if it's Auburn, we already saw what they did. If it's Alabama, they have the guidebook on how to do that from Auburn. So I'm not really worried about that, but you have FAU North Texas. That's going to be fun. You're going to have Memphis versus either UCF or USF. If they play UCF, it's going to be a different Memphis team than who the Knights faced earlier. That will be fun. There's no Sun Belt champion. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're all going to be kind of interesting. Like, that sounds like such a cop-out answer. I'm not trying to cop out, but I don't see any of them that are going to be really bad. There's a chance the SEC. I know got a lot of Georgia fans and a lot of Georgia fans watching. I'm not trying to insult you or disrespect, but there's a chance that that is going to be the worst one of the games, unless something happens in the Pac-12 title where like USC just pours it on. All right, now I'm refreshing the super chat thing. I missed 2. That's so dumb. It like pops up at the top. I don't know how I didn't see it. Do you ever watch Sports Gaming 1? And if you do you like his opinions on the college football playoffs? I had never, this is not disrespect, I'd never heard of his channel until like 2 days ago. I was trying to check one of my tags and see if like I ranked for it and popped up and stuff. And I saw he was doing an Eliminator video. And I was like, oh, an Eliminator video, you say. But I didn't really watch it. So I don't really have an opinion on it. I hope he's doing good though. I hope he's doing good content. What do you think of Colorado State's late season meltdown if you by any chance follow it? The Wyoming loss hurt. The Boise State's letting Boise State come down like they did, or coming back like they did, that hurt. And that's something that Bobo's going to have to really focus on next year. I don't know if it's a stamina issue. I don't know if it's a conditioning thing. But winning those games late, that would have put them in the Mountain West Championship game. If Bama wins, should Jalen go to New York? No, sorry. Him winning shouldn't. He hasn't done enough to put him on the bubble, I don't think, and him winning won't tip the scale that way. Georgia has won every game in the 2000s against Georgia Tech and Atlanta. Maybe that's it. Whatever to watch. I flipped it in my head. Georgia Tech hasn't beaten Georgia at home. That's what it is. So I don't know why I flipped that. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. Touchdown Mississippi State 24-13. I assume no, that was 24-6. So yeah. Mississippi, somebody said touchdown Mississippi State 24-13, and then somebody said Mississippi just scored. What's the score in that game now? I can go to like ESPN and check it out, but I'm terrified that I'm going to blow this whole operation up if I do that. I feel like if I like try to mess with anything, that I'm going to like accidentally pull the plug on something that I need to make this going. Is Wisconsin out if they lose Saturday? Probably. Yeah. If they lose next Saturday, probably even if they lose to Ohio State, but losing against Minnesota, I think they're done. Since Pitt has a knack of losing to bad teams, but knocking off the second-ranked team in the college football playoff, what would happen to the college football playoff if Miami loses? I actually joked about that with my dad the other day. I was like, well, Clemson lost to Pitt last year. Maybe Miami will do it again this year. I think Miami would probably be out. Clemson lost on the same day that Washington and Michigan both lost last year. So their loss didn't look that bad. I think Clemson was 2 and lost and fell to like 4 or 5. They didn't really tumble. But when you have teams like Clemson and Oklahoma and Auburn and Georgia right behind you, and maybe Alabama if Auburn beats Alabama, Miami could drop all the way to like 7 or 8. And I think they'd still be ahead of Notre Dame. Maybe Ohio State beating Michigan jumps them ahead of Miami. I don't know. So I think they would be knocked out at that point. It's over 9,000. I can't do the Vegeta voice. Doomlerious. It's a really fun name. If you watch Dragon Ball Z Abridged, if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, please watch Dragon Ball Z Abridged. They are so insanely funny. I'll randomly just watch like 2 episodes every once in a while when I'm like eating dinner or something. Miss State just recovered an onside kick. All right, well, let me go to ESPN and hopefully I don't lose the entire chat or miss a freaking super chat again. I'm gonna like hate myself for doing that for a long time. And my computer's moving really slow. Washington is beating New York. I don't really think I care about who wins that game. I'm an Eagles fan, in case you don't know, so I'm flying pretty high. Pun intended. So yeah, 24-13. There's still 9 minutes to go, according to ESPN, which is always behind. So we got a little bit of time left. Onside kick. That's pretty interesting. False alarm. Onside kick did not go 10 yards. Well, that stinks. I think the Egg Bowl, like rivalry games, especially ones that I don't have any, like, to be completely honest with you, personally, I don't care who wins that game. It won't change anything in my life. But rivalry games that are really hated like that, I really want them to go down to the wire. I think there's more dramatic if it goes down the wire. Tyler Hip asked, what is Thrice? They are a band. I saw them last week in Charlotte, actually. I've been a fan of Thrice for 14 years now or something. They've been around for a while. They have a really big discography, but they are really good. King of the Lawn asks, do you like the idea of an 8-team playoff? Yes. I am in favor of an 8-team playoff. All 5 group of 5 champions automatically get in, and 3 at-large bids. And the committee gets to rank them however they want. Touchdown Ole Miss, 31-13. Well, there goes that. There goes that. Eagles fan? Dude, that's awesome. I hope they go to the Super Bowl. You have no idea. I hope they win the Super Bowl. They've been to the Super Bowl in my lifetime, and it was heartbreaking when we lost the freaking Patriots. So I'm really hoping if they win the Super Bowl, Like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I'll go be in Philly for the parade or whatever. I'm not missing that. But who's the best 5-6 team in the country? What do you think about Cal and UCLA? Best 5-6 team, I have no idea off the top of my head. UCLA, you know, they have Josh Rosen, which sometimes is an incredibly great thing, and sometimes is fine. Cal is in rebuilding mode with first-year head coach. Cal has every opportunity in the world to compete for a Pac-12 North title in the next 2 or 3 years if they build on what they did this year. UCLA going forward will depend a lot on who they get for their next head coach, which could be Chip Kelly, which could be a lot of fun. Going to check out this DBZ abridged You the Man, Dustin, Go Tigers. You will not be disappointed. They redub over Dragon Ball Z. It takes 3 or 4 months between each episode because of how much work they have to put into it. They have all these great voice actors. It is so good. It is so funny. They're in a little bit of a hiatus right now. They're at the very end of the Cell saga. Really nerdy. If nobody cares about Dragon Ball Z, I apologize. But they're at the end of the Cell saga. But they keep getting hit with trademark infringements and copyright. So they're going into a little bit of hiatus while they have to battle some of that off. So there won't be a new episode the rest of this year. But if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z growing up, please go check out Dragon Ball Z Abridged. It's by Team 4 Star. They are so funny. So funny. Most underrated rivalry, Washington State versus Idaho. Yeah, I don't know if this is true or not. But I heard that because those teams are right on the opposite side of the border from each other. They're 8 miles apart. And from Moscow, Idaho, which is a really weird way to name your town, considering our history with Russia. But Moscow is right on the border with Pullman. They're both border towns. And I heard that back when the rivalry was really, I don't know if it was ever hot, but it was a better rivalry than it is now, that the losing team had to walk back to their, the losing fan base had to walk back to their dorms if they were on the road or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. Has he talked about the Iron Bowl yet? No. I've talked about it in what happens if one team beats the other, but I haven't actually talked about the Iron Bowl yet. So I'm going to do a whole video on that tomorrow because I never did a life championship video for Alabama this week because they beat Mercer, and who cares? But I'm going to turn that life championship into a Iron Bowl preview, but it is going to be, I think, one of the better games we see all year. I think both defenses are going to focus on the run, try to shut Jalen down, try to shut Kerryon down, and it's going to force the quarterbacks to throw kind of in the middle of the secondary. Those 10-yard slant routes to open up the running game. I think both teams have a pretty similar playbook on defense. And on offense, for Alabama, it's going to be how can we get Jalen loose in some run-pass options to open up something on the kind of the perimeter of the defense. And I think for Auburn, it's going to be what Miss State did. I think they are going to have 200 yards of rushing. They're just going to run the ball and let the play clock run all the way down to 2 or 3 seconds and then snap the ball and try to limit Alabama's possessions and wear down the defense exactly like Miss State did. I think that is kind of what we're going to see. I think it's going to be a quicker game than some of the other 3:30 games because both teams are going to focus on the run as much. But it's going to be a really, even if you don't care about either team, you care about the game because of the playoff implications, but it's going to be a really, really fun game to watch. by far, it's the highlight of the 3:30 time slot, in my opinion. But yeah, I'll have an entire video on that, kind of going into more depth tomorrow. Tyler Rubel? I don't think it's Rubble. There's only one B. Tyler Rubel asks, top 3 college football programs of all time. Let me hear it. Off the top of my head, if I had to pick the top 3 of all time, like from the 1800s to now, I would probably go in no order: Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. They always seem to be there. Always seem to be winning awards. Conference, well, not Notre Dame, but Oklahoma and Alabama conference championships. Always on the national scene in some way. What about y'all? What do you think the top 3 programs of all time is? And there's a delay, so. Thoughts on Lane Kiffin and FAU, says Go Pack. I think it's really, I think they're fun. I think his offense, it's amazing what a coach like Lane Kiffin can do with an offense. How he can just retool it. Alabama would not be the Alabama the last few years if he wasn't the offensive coordinator of those games. And he said after last year that if he was the OC in the national championship game, that, Thanksgiving, that Alabama would have won that game. And I believe him. I do think if he was the offensive coordinator with Jalen, kind of like the quarterback whisper, that they win. And with FAU, I think FAU is going to beat North Texas, and they're going to win the CUSA championship. I think they're a really fun team to watch. If you haven't watched FAU play, other than the Navy game to start the year, that like lightning delay that took forever, if you watch any other game, they're really fun to watch. The FAU-FIU game is going to be fun. So people are starting to come back in with some of their 3 teams. Florida State, OSU, I assume that's Ohio State, and USC. Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas. Stick 118 just says number 1, Alabama. That's it. Notre Dame, Alabama, Ohio State. Ohio State's up there too. Michigan, Alabama, Oklahoma. Jared says nothing because it disappeared. Where'd it go? Jared says Alabama, Ohio State, USC. Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State. So it seems to be mostly Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas, USC, like the blue bloods. Those all make sense to me. Mofin10 asked Lane Kiffin to Arkansas. That would be fun. I want Lane Kiffin at UCLA. I said that in the Jim Mora video. I want Lane Kiffin at UCLA to just play USC every year. But being in Arkansas and playing Nick Saban every year and occasionally playing Tennessee, that would be fun too. Favorite college football moments? I don't have one. A lot of them jump out. I got to go to the national championship in 2015. Alabama Clemson won. That was really good. I have a lot of random little moments from when I was growing up as a college football fan. I remember Texas USC, watching that game live. I remember being so excited. The Penn State Florida State Orange Bowl a bunch of years ago. If I had to pick one gun to my head, it would probably be Terrence Cody's blocked field goal against Tennessee in 2009. That's one of the few times that I lost my mind. I don't really do that. I'm a pretty chill person. I lost my mind at that game. The next great says, Mississippi State loses to an unranked Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. But they beat 3 top 5 teams in Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn next season. Can they make it to the playoffs with 3 losses but 3 top 5 wins? No. A loss to Vanderbilt pretty much eliminates you. If you lose to Arkansas, first off, 3 losses, you're done. Even if we expanded the playoff to 8 teams, 3 losses pretty much knocks you out. Very rarely, like a USC from last year, probably could have got in with 3 losses, but no, they would not make it. BYU versus SMU in the Holiday Bowl is the best comeback ever in college football, says Tuna Duck. Yep, it's the most unlikely. 20 points with 3 minutes to go or something. Do you guys remember the Alamo Bowl 2 years ago, Oregon TCU, where Gary Patterson changed his shirt at halftime, and then they went on. I think he went from a purple to a black shirt, and then they went on that huge run to beat Oregon. That was fun. UCLA Texas A&M was fun. Your local cookie says, "Gosh, no, Tennessee should have won 13-12 that game." Yes, they should have. Actually, Tennessee was kind of dead that whole game until like the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Scored a touchdown. Oh, they had a field goal. They scored a touchdown, got the onside kick, and then set up that field goal. Terrence Cody blocked. He blocked another field goal in that game too. He blocked 2 in the fourth quarter, I think. All right, I think I'm going to do this for about 10 more minutes, and then about 11 o'clock my time, I'm going to hang it up. Tyler Hipp says, Chip Kelly just got hired. Is that true? And if so, where? Let me Google Chip Kelly, see what pops up. I don't see anything popping up just yet. Maybe it's on Twitter. Has anybody else heard that Chip Kelly just got hired? Because I didn't quite see that yet. Chip Kelly to Florida A&M confirmed. $30K a year. Yeah, man. Oh, LOL, just kidding, Tyler. Yeah, great. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. My opinion, New Reality says, what's your opinion? Oh, real quick, Tuna Duck. Did you see BYU's failed comeback versus rival Utah in the 15 Las Vegas Bowl? I did. I think, I might be getting the numbers wrong, but I think Utah was up 31-0, and then BYU scored the last 28 points in the second half and just missed it. Yeah. Failed comebacks like Oklahoma State's against Kansas State, they hurt, man, to watch. Well, what's your opinion on Butch Jones being fired? Yeah, I think Butch Jones should have been fired. I hope that doesn't sound patronizing. But yeah, he should have absolutely been fired. You know, I was kind of on the fence with Charlie Strong at Texas until they lost to Kansas. Never forget that they did that. The year anniversary was like 3 days ago. But, yeah, you know, at Tennessee, that was the easiest decision. I still think I would have let him coach until the end of the season, though, because you're already not going to a bowl game. But I'm not the biggest fan in the world of letting coaches go early. You can, even if you just announced it and give him the option to coach. I've seen coaches like Kevin Sumlin is pretty much done at Texas A&M. All of the reports are that he's done. They're going to fire him no matter what he does against LSU. But he's coaching, and you can say maybe that's a distraction or not. I don't know. But like UCLA firing Jim Mora before, like 6 days before their last game, unless they win and get a bowl game, I don't get that at all. Just let them ride out to the end of the regular season. Who is the best college football head coach in history? Is Nick Saban. I don't. There's a lot of guys at the top of that you can say, like Woody Hayes, the Bear, Bobby Bowden, Joe Paterno. If you just look at the coaching, you can say that about a lot of guys. But Nick Saban's doing it now, and it is the hardest it's ever been to do what he's doing, and to do it at the level he's doing it. It's never been harder. So I have to say Nick Saban. Best coach is Bear Bryant. I mean, so he won 6 natties. That matters. He won a bunch of conference championships. That matters. But Bear Bryant did it at a time when he could have like 150 people on the sideline. He could find out that Tennessee wants this running back, and he could just go and offer the running back a scholarship, and there's a great chance if Bear Bryant offers you a scholarship, you're probably going to go in the 60s and 70s. So he could just have the entire sideline covered in red jerseys, So who knows? That's why I think, with Nick Saban. Fact or fiction? Jim Harbaugh is on the hot seat next season if they lose to Ohio State. Fact. 10 wins is nice. Beating Ohio State and being in the playoff is much nicer. They would have lost to Florida State in also another failed comeback in the Orange Bowl last year. They blew Florida out the year before, so maybe it depends on the bowl game. But I definitely think regardless, Michigan's going to have to come into next year with a lot to prove. Not just Harbaugh, the whole program, every football player, because he brought Michigan back to a certain level, but he wasn't hired to bring them 10 wins. He was hired to bring them championships. And if he can't do that next year, you have to, I don't want to say fire him, but you have to start putting some pressure, tightening the screws. Urban Meyer is better than Nick Saban. I disagree, but I think they are right now the only two guys. They're the only two guys to ever win a national championship at two different schools, I think. So they're kind of in a league by themselves, and then there's other coaches like Dabo is in that realm now. I thought until this year maybe Jimbo was up there. It'll be interesting to see if he can go to A&M and turn that ship around, because that seems to be where he might want to go, which is kind of strange to me. Urban Meyer will schedule games that will be a challenge for his teams, and he'll do them away, but Nick Saban does hard games on a neutral field and has one of the easiest schedules. Part of that is, part of that's true. You're not going to see Alabama go into Oklahoma. You are not going to see that. But part of that depends on the Big Ten. So last year, the Big Ten looked like the best conference in football. And you got to the bowl games and you were like, oh, never mind. They were kind of pretenders. And there are some years the SEC has done that. There are some years where the SEC is the most competitive, maybe not the best, but surviving it is pretty impressive. But it's not. This is not the 2009 SEC with LSU, 2010, LSU and Alabama and Auburn. And so it kind of depends on the year for that. Likes are shutting out the dislikes. Yeah, they are. 76-0. That's awesome. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys like this. I enjoy hanging out with you. We're over 100, 102 watching. That's really cool too. So I'm glad you guys enjoy this. Nick Saban needs to schedule non-conference road games. He is not going to do that. Sharkman. See, I saw that comment. He's not going to do that. I agree. I wish Alabama would. I wish they would do home and homes, but they have a very specific target in mind for how they want to build their schedules, and it's worked out for them so far. If they beat Auburn, maybe even if they don't, they're going to be in all 4 of the first 4 playoffs. They're the only team that won 3 BCS championships. So the proof is there, and while some of us may not like it, I would love to see Alabama at Oklahoma, at Texas. I would love to see Texas at Alabama. I think that would be really fun for both fan bases. But Saban is not going to do it. Neutral fields prove who the better team is. That's true too, because it kind of eliminates the home field advantage. It's not as fun. When you can do a home and home, I'd prefer that. But you're right. The national championship's on a neutral site. Aiden asks, if you could make your own university in any city without a D1 university, what would it be called, and what would be the nickname, and what conference? Please answer. I have no idea, my friend. That's a lot of things. My own university in any city without a D1 university, what would it be called, and what would be the nickname, and what conference? I don't know. If the next edition of NCAA, like 19 or whatever, If the next edition of the college football game has that feature, I can do that and see. But all right. Alabama has the easiest schedule. They play easy teams. That's why they are undefeated. Nick is a big fat cheater. That's not cheating. But it depends. So there's some years, you have to play Georgia and LSU and Auburn and a scrappy Miss State team. That's not an easy schedule. It's not. Years like this year, where they pulled Vanderbilt in Tennessee from the East, Miss State was still scrappy. Auburn is going to be a great win, but LSU didn't have. They lost to Troy. They didn't have the greatest year. Arkansas is trash. Ole Miss doesn't even have a head coach. Like, this year isn't the best year for the SEC, particularly Alabama, and that's why people are wondering if Alabama, if they lose, if they're out. I don't think so. I don't think they're automatically out because they are still Alabama, and the committee knows that they will bring eyeballs to the TV, which again goes back to something I said probably like an hour ago in the stream, where the committee, yeah, they'll pick the best 4 teams if it's convenient, but if they have a team that's like the 5th or 6th best team, they can justify putting them at 4. So if Alabama loses to Auburn, it's not going to be a blowout, I don't think. I certainly don't think that. But if they lose to Auburn by a touchdown, could they justify putting Alabama in over Miami, who theoretically had a better schedule than Alabama? Yeah, I think they could. So he's a big fat cheater. All right. Saw Kalen ask thoughts on I-4. I lost it though. I think it's UCF's game to lose. I think they probably have more momentum. They have the better offense. Quentin Flowers is a beast, so if he can turn it on, it could be dangerous. But I think Mackenzie Milton. I just think UCF is going to get it done. It's at home for your Knights, so I think UCF. It's UCF's game to lose. The only problem would be is if Scott Frost is for some reason distracted. I don't know why that could be. Maybe he's talking to teams. Maybe a team from Gainesville. Whatever. But if he's distracted or if the team thinks about it too much, it can't handle the pressure, then they may fold, especially if USF jumps out to a 10 or 14-point lead. UCF is perfectly capable of coming back. I don't know if they are. If they will, though. It's 11:01 p.m., Dustin. Are we keeping on with the stream, says Stephen Banks. Stephen wants me to get off the stream. That's what that sounds like. I'll answer 3 more questions. 4 more questions, because the first one I saw doesn't count because it's the easiest in the world. Dalton Smith, what was your favorite year watching college football? 2007. There will never be a year like it. The single craziest year of all time. That's the year of Stanford, USC, and App State, Michigan, and Dennis Dixon getting hurt for Oregon, and LSU won. They lost to Kentucky and Arkansas in 3 overtimes and won the national championship. Yeah, absolutely crazy. So 3 more questions. Do I think Baker Mayfield will win the Heisman? So I talked about that in my Heisman Watch video yesterday. I think he will. I just asked the question, do you think his antics against Kansas would disqualify him in a lot of people's eyes? I think in some voters, they may vote him 2 or 3. You can't deny he's one of the best 2 or 3 players in the country right now. Just looking at college, not projecting forward or anything like that. But yeah, I think he's going to win. I think most people have already decided, even if he sucks against TCU or some reason is the reason they lose to West Virginia, I just, in my opinion, I don't see anybody else even close to him just yet. If he does those antics again in Saturday's game or next week, maybe that's enough to make people be like, we really don't want his face on our trophy. But for the most part, I do think he's going to win. I think he's going to win And I don't think it's going to be, I think he's going to win by a couple hundred points. Best non-Power 5 game ever, in my opinion, it's Nevada-Boise in 2011. It's the Colin Kaepernick game. Best non-Power 5 game of all time. If it's just between those two teams, that one's up there. That was a fun game to watch because under that, Boise, Oklahoma doesn't count. What are some other big group of 5 games over the years? TCU Boise State in 2011 was really fun. When the Mountain West had both of those teams for 1 year, and the game was supposed to be at TCU, but then TCU bolted for the Big East before they went to the Big 12, and the conference was like, "Oh, you're leaving our conference? Screw you! We want Boise to win," and they moved the game to Boise, and then TCU won anyway. That one might be up there just for the storyline, and the game was, I think Boise got a big lead, and TCU had to come back to win. Baker Mayfield isn't playing in West Virginia game. He is suspended. Doomlarius is right. He's not suspended. He just isn't starting. And he lost his captainship. So he's playing in the game. Frank Schaefer says, how did you not see the kick six on SportsCenter the day after the kick six happened? The real question is, how did I not see the kick six on SportsCenter for the next 2 years? And it's because I get it. I get it. I don't need to see it. I know what happens. Dodging that, I don't think I've ever done a more difficult thing in my entire life than dodge the kick six. I've seen him catch it, and I know what's happening. So usually I'll mute the TV, or I'll literally go into I'll be a child. I'll put my hands over my ears and be like, no, and I can't hear what's going on. I've seen the shot of, I think it's Chris Davis is the guy that returned it, right? I've seen the shot of him running and looking over his right shoulder. And I've seen the shot of the fans running onto the field from the blimp view. But that's it. I've never seen the play, and I never will. I'll go to my grave never seeing that play. I get it. All right, let's get one last question. Michael Allen says, dude, Mississippi State may be coming back. Get by a TV. I can't. I'm so far from a TV. But I can go to ESPN.com and check real quick. It's not on the front. ESPN, you're playing a game right now. You have the Egg Bowl on. Why is New York and Washington your main thing on your website? Make it your game, guys. 31-21, Ole Miss with 3 minutes left, but Ole Miss has the ball. 4th and 8, the Mississippi 41. It's getting a little dicey. 31-28, people are saying. Holy cow. How? Did they return the punt? That would be nuts. Oh, I don't want an ad. Yeah, I'm seeing 31-21, so they must have just scored with 2 minutes left. Y'all are saying 31-28. What did you think about the Rose Bowl last year? Penn State versus USC. Do you think it was one of the best games in college football history? And what about the Ohio State-Penn State game? Yeah, the Rose Bowl last year was so fun to watch. It's one of the most... Something I really enjoy about college football, when your teams aren't playing, teams you are really invested in aren't playing, the sport is so much better to watch. It sounds backwards, but when you don't have a horse in the race and you can just watch college football and enjoy it for what it actually is, like that game, it's so fun. Because when you're emotionally involved, you're like so focused and so upset and live and die with each play instead of just watching and enjoying the game. It's one of the most fun games I've ever seen. All the way down to the wire. All right, I'm going to stay on here till the end of this game unless they go into overtime. 105 left, 31-28. You're behind. Yeah, I got the stupid ESPN. I got the stupid ESPN website up. I can't watch TV. So now it's showing 31-28 with 105 left. Miss State scored 22 points in the fourth quarter. And they have the ball? How'd they get the ball? Hey, how'd they get the ball? They got an onside kick? Holy crap. You're kidding. Wow. If you look at the ESPN, like the game page, they had Ole Miss up a 99.9% chance to win. And right now it's at 98.9. Oh, game over? Ole Miss got the onside kick? Poop. That's fine. It's exciting. I wanted it to go to the wire. I guess it did. It's live on YouTube. Yeah, but one, I didn't know that. And two, yeah, mostly I didn't know that. But I wouldn't be able to look at the chat and you guys. I don't have another computer. Ole Miss got the onside kick. Well, that stinks. I kind of wanted it to go into overtime. I think that would be fun. Oh, well. Ole Miss wins the Egg Bowl, and they would be bowl eligible, but they did that to themselves. All right. Anyway, guys, that is it for me, I believe. I think I'm going to hop off here. Iron Bowl, who wins? I think right now I'm probably going to say Auburn. I think they have all the momentum in the world. I think Auburn probably wins. But it's going to go right down to the wire. So Aiden is saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what the heck? What's up? What did I miss? Oh, is it because I said Auburn? Maybe it's because I said Auburn. Scotty Pants 10 says, when will you stream again? Monday nights. I'll stream on Monday. And then I'm not going to stream at the end of next week because my best friend is scheduled to have a baby. So I'm not going to be home probably. But I think I'm going to live stream the selection show next Sunday so we can all find out who's going to the playoff together and talk about it for a while. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you had the replay, I hope you enjoyed that as well. Yeah, let's do this again on Monday after a great rivalry week. Whoever you are, whoever you're rooting for, I hope your team wins. Unless your team is playing my team, and then I hope your team loses. It's kind of how it always is, right? But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, for streaming along, and talking with me in the chat. I really appreciate it. And especially for the super chats. I really appreciate you guys helping to support the channel. Sorry for the comments that I didn't see for a few minutes. I don't understand why. It usually puts it right at the top. Thank you guys very much. Have a very happy Black Friday. If you're going shopping or something, be safe. If you're watching rivalry games with family members or friends who are not fans of your team, also be safe. Somebody died in the Alabama-Auburn rivalry this past week, so be very safe. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I will see you Monday. Until then, as always, see you next time. I think he was 1-3 against non-conference teams to go 7-0 in the CUSA is really impressive. Somebody else jump out at me at the top. Yeah, I think those would be the first people that jumped out at me without really like looking at a list of teams and their accomplishments. Who do you guys think should be coach of the year? There'll be a couple. There's a bunch of different organizations and trusts that make those decisions. Florida State's going to destroy Florida. Auburn's going to beat Alabama, and Clemson's going to win a close one. Yeah, I absolutely believe all of those. If I had to, if I were a betting man, that would be my bet. Destroy Florida. They should beat them handily, but Florida State's not exactly a world beater this year. But I do think Florida State will beat Florida. If I were a betting man, I would say Auburn beats Alabama, especially with Alabama's lack of depth because of injuries on the defense, specifically in the middle, right there at linebacker. And I think Clemson, Carolina is going to be closer than a lot of people think. People who don't know that rivalry are going to think Clemson is going to blow them out the way they did last year, and it probably will not happen. The chat does really weird things. I got to get used to this chat. Maybe it's me. Like, I scroll with my fingers, and sometimes maybe I overcorrect and it scrolls all the way to the bottom. Mark Richt, yeah, at Miami, absolutely. UAB's head coach, yeah, to come back, and they weren't a team last year. And I actually thought they may beat Florida. They really didn't. But I thought they really... I would have bet on UAB beating Florida last week. What school do you think Chip Kelly chooses, UCLA or Florida? Oh, Arrowbound says Kirby Smart. That makes sense. Evan B says UCLA or Florida for Chip Kelly. I think he probably chooses UCLA. I think that's Florida's the better job. You get more money. You're in a more high-profile conference. The East is very winnable right now. UCLA... NC State needs to destroy UNC. They do. If that game is even close, that is an embarrassment for NC State. They have more talent, theoretically more confidence, though the Wake Forest loss probably hurt that a little bit. They probably shouldn't have lost to Wake Forest, who is strangely on a hot streak after the Syracuse and NC State games. But you got to beat what is UNC? They're 2-9, 3-8. NC State needs to beat them. And NC State, over the last few years, would beat a North Carolina team that NC State was actually the underdog in. So now the roles are reversed. If I was an NC State fan, just because of karma, I would be a little worried. Ohio State and Michigan will be close, but with what happened last week, we will win, says Grant Ritter 33. Ohio State, it's the same thing. Ohio State should win that game. It should not go into overtime. And I assume what he said with what happened last week, they're talking about Michigan's quarterback getting injured. O'Korn is still there. Depends on whether you value that as a really good thing or a really bad thing, but he is still there. But Ohio State just has more talent, especially on offense. With the running backs that they have, with JT Barrett, even though Ohio State fans give him a lot of hell. Actually, fans all over the country give him a lot of hell. Ohio State should beat Michigan. New lighting and mic. No, this is the same mic that I've used for the last few live streams. It's the Blue Yeti, and I got a little pop filter for it. And the lighting is the same lighting I use for my regular videos, which is a ring light. But the camera is back there. It's a Canon, and with the cameras like that, they run for 30 minutes and then they die. They cut off their recording, and for these live streams, I can't do that. There's a way to run DSLRs as a webcam where I can live stream from it. I could figure that out if I wanted to, but everybody tells me that even live streaming, they shut off at 30 minutes. So I would prefer that because that camera looks a lot better than this camera does. But it is what it is. It's a more difficult job in a worse market. I mean, it's a great market for recruiting, but you have USC right there. You have pro teams overshadowing you right there. You are in a conference with 3 other teams in your state. Florida, you don't have any of those, but you have more pressure at Florida. You are expected to come into Florida and win immediately. So I think UCLA it's the easier job, not the better job, but it's probably the better job to take for a coach, especially one who didn't coach this past year right now, who coached in the pros the last 4 years and didn't have a lot of success there. To kind of reestablish himself, I would probably tiptoe into UCLA and stay there for a couple of years, and then once I kind of get back into the swing of things, I can go and take over an SEC type job, because Florida, if you're not careful, has the potential to chew you up and spit you back out, and I'm not quite sure that is exactly what. If I were Chip Kelly, that's not what I would want immediately. I would probably rather take the UCLA job, where if you go 6-6, it's fine your first year. If you go 6-6 at Florida, you may not see a second or a third year. So that's my take on it. I don't know. I feel like Florida started going after him first, and then UCLA's made a huge push this past week, and now Florida's trying to bounce back. I saw where a bunch of regents from Florida took a plane trip from Ocala up to, I think he lives in Nashua, New Hampshire. But Lincoln Riley for Coach of the Year? Nope. First year head coach to do what he did with a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback? Maybe, but I think he was as set up for success for a first year head coach as you can possibly be. I think that's why Bob Stoops did what he did when he did. But if you want to look at it as first year head coach, that's interesting. Paul Christ, maybe. The committee doesn't care about Wisconsin. The polls don't really care about Wisconsin. They don't respect Wisconsin or the schedule. So maybe he doesn't get the nod towards that kind of a thing. Hey, lifers. Dustin here. I believe I am good now. Should be live. Was running a little bit late because of Thanksgiving, but hopefully everything is good now. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully you can see me. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching this. The event has already passed if you're watching the replay. So sorry you missed it. But to everybody watching this, whether you're live or on the replay, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have had a very fun and safe day. And the Egg Bowl is happening right now. I'm not near a television because of the way my shooting setup is. I'm not near a TV, so I can't see what's going on. I saw the Fitzgerald injury, so we could talk a little bit about that. I want to get into rivalry weekend, everything that's going to happen this weekend, playoff implications, and all of that. This is my favorite weekend of the year. This is my holiday. You can take Thanksgiving. You can take Christmas. I will take rivalry weekend. So to everybody in the live stream, hello. I hear people saying sup, Varson188, Space Duck Fondue. So I think I'm here. I look pale. I am kind of pale, but it's also this light. Let me see if I can dim it a little bit. We'll dim it. We'll see if that does anything. How are you guys doing? You guys have a good Thanksgiving so far? What's the score on the Ole Miss versus Miss State game? I don't know. Last score I saw was 10-6 Ole Miss. Miss State kicked a field goal right before I started to get this ready. So, yeah, the stick pick says 10-6 at halftime. So, what's going on, Michael? Texas Sports Gaming. Gregory Walnut. Hello, hello. Jake Stoner, go Cougs. Big game in the Apple Cup this weekend. GoPack says if Lane Kiffin stays at FAU for one more season, FAU could go 11-1 or 12-0, I think. Maybe. I don't think he will. I think this was a tryout season, and he will be moving on to a Power 5 team this year. So that's my opinion. 43 people in here. Thank you. Welcome. If you guys haven't seen a live stream yet, I tend to get bogged down in the comments pretty quickly. If you want me to make sure that I see your comment, one of the only few ways I think will guarantee that is a super chat, which would be greatly appreciated. It's basically like a tip jar, so I would really appreciate it. I'm here to talk about a lot of the games this weekend, but I kind of let the chat dictate where we go and what we talk about. So that way it's not just me talking at a camera for a really long time. I kind of interact and engage with you guys. So let's see. Grant Ritter 33 says, will the Gamecocks keep it close? I don't know. The talent gap between the two teams is pretty big, but it's at Williams-Brice at night. South Carolina, if they lose the game, in the big scheme of things, who cares as far as the national outlook on it, right? If Clemson loses, it's such a big deal. So all the pressures with Clemson, South Carolina has almost no pressure, so they can take a lot of risks. They can do all kinds of weird things in the game to try to throw Clemson off. And I think the first half is going to be really tough. The second half, Clemson may pull away, but it could also end up being like it was 2 years ago when Clemson was down there and kind of got a little bit of a lead in the second half, and then South Carolina made it a one-score game with like a second left. But they did get it back to a one-score game, so it may end up being something like that. Who deserves Coach of the Year award says Justin, but there's a 2 in the middle. So I'm just going to call you Justin 2. I don't really know. I'm not going to call you Tustin. That seems kind of weird. Who deserves Coach of the Year award? There's a lot of people that could get that. Obviously, you're going to have the people that are always kind of at the top, like Nick Saban, right? You're going to have Gus Malzahn overcoming early problems to get there. I'm not quite sure a lot of people expected Washington State to do what they did, especially early on. So maybe a Mike Leach. Scott Frost to go undefeated so far at UCF is very impressive. Lane Kiffin at FAU, even though